Hi everyone, I'm Cheryl and welcome to the entryway of my house. Normally you see me in my sewing room at the beginning of every video, but this is where my project, this is its final destination, is going to be on this little bench. I bought this wooden bench about a year ago, was going to make a pretty accent pillow to put on it, never got around to it. One day I was in Joann's after I made my purchases. They said you could go over to that table over there and pick out any one item that you want. Well, I picked up this really cute pillow, the potting shed. I had it on here for quite some time, but it really wasn't exactly what I wanted. I wanted something a little more colorful. So let's go to my sewing room and I'm going to show you how to make a long shaped pillow like this with piping. This is the fabric that I'm using. I love this because it's a very large print, and my favorite types of fabric to buy are those with these large prints on it. There's a little bit of teal in the leaves, so I selected this teal fabric for the piping. I've unfolded the fabric, and one of the dilemmas with working with large prints, and you're going to put it in a pillow, is you have to decide which large print are you going to focus on to be in the accent pillow. Now the print is running this way. You can see the leaves are all running this way. So I've taken this 24-inch ruler. Now it's not as wide as I'm going to make my pillow, but it gives me an idea. Do I want to focus on this leaf and flower, or do I want to go up to this one? There are so many different choices that you could put in this. Or if you want to go across it where you get a little bit of everything. So when you're going to buy your large print fabric and you're going to make a long skinny accent pillow like this, if you go from raw edge to raw edge on the fabric, because my selvage ends are over here on this side, you would have to buy more of the fabric because it's 24 inches, and always add 3 or 4 inches onto what you need. Or if you're going to go across this way, you would need a very small amount of fabric. I couldn't really decide on which section and which large prints I wanted in this pillow. So I cut the front and the back sections. I focused on different parts of the fabric. So I got a little bit of everything on this pillow. You can make this accent pillow any size you want. You can make it a square and then use a pillow form, but because mine's a rectangle, I don't want to have to make my own pillow form. So I'm going to be using polyfill stuffing inside of this. And the measurements of my pillow that I've cut are 10.5 inches wide this way, and then I cut 25 inches that way. When making your piping, you need to decide how you want to cut your fabric. You can either cut your fabric on the bias, which would be going across this way. So when you're going to make piping on the bias, you need to buy a lot more fabric. If you're not sure how to cut fabric on the bias, click on the link in the upper right hand corner, and I have a detailed video on how to make bias cut strips of fabric. I've noticed that I've done it both ways. I've cut my fabric on the bias and on the straight grain for piping. I find very little difference when I'm putting it on. So for this piping, I'm just going to cut straight across on the straight grain. So if you're going to do that, then you would leave your fabric folded and put your ruler's edge on the fold line up here. Straighten this raw edge out. So you're going to cut it straight across. For this pillow, I'm going to cut 3 strips of fabric that are 2 inches wide. And this is going to be plenty for this. So if you're not sure how much you want to cut, then just measure the 4 sides of your pillow stack the strips on top of each other and cut these selvage edges off. Then stitch the strips together. You would bring front sides together. Stitch a 1/4 inch seam and then press these seams open. To make the piping, you need to buy some cording. This I got at Walmart. It's a Simplicity cording, and it's not very wide. It's maybe 3/8. I mean, not even that much. It's very narrow. You can make it really wide and puffy. So this is really large piping. But for this pillow, I just want to use this size. When you make piping, I recommend you use this kind of presser foot. It's very narrow. You can go into a sewing machine supply store and just say you want to make piping and you need a piping foot or a really narrow foot. What this allows you is that the needle would be going along this edge here, so you can get up real close to where you're stitching. Make sure on your cording you have tape wrapped around it when you're cutting it. So place your cording in the middle of your fabric and just fold it over so that it's like this. And with your presser foot, when you're first stitching the piping together, don't get too close to the cording. Stay a little ways back, and you're just going to stitch right up along there until you get to the end of how much piping you need. One thing I forgot to mention to you, when you are placing the cording inside, you want to stay back in a few inches because eventually you're going to bring the two ends together. So you want to leave some fabric there for that. So fold it over and then lower your presser foot. Don't stitch too close to the piping just yet. When you're first putting it together, you want to stay back away from the piping a little ways. When you stitch this onto the fabric, then we're going to get up real close. But right now, stay back a little ways and go ahead and stitch all the way down. After I've stitched it all together, I'm going to trim the seam down about 1/4 of an inch in width. So I'm just going to eyeball it a little bit. Now, you can measure if you like, but I find if I just eyeball it a little bit, it'll turn out pretty good. Place the end here, somewhere in the middle on one of the long sides, and place the raw edge here up against the raw edge of the pillow fabric. And go ahead and place your pins like this. Now at the corner, in order for this to go around the corner easily, do little clips. You might have to do 3 or 4 little clips in here. Remember, don't cut through your thread. And once you've got it cut, and you might have to do more, your corners will be slightly rounded when you're doing this. You can't make a sharp point when you've got piping there. So that's why you need to cut this fabric so that the piping will go around the corner. So do all of your corners like this and continue pinning all the way around the edge. I'm coming around to where I need to bring the two ends together. So there's the end of my cording. And right here, I've placed this here so I could see where the cording ends. So that's where it ends, right there. So now I'm going to overlap my other end. And I'm going to go over a 1/2 inch from where this edge is. I'm going to go over this way, a 1/2 inch. I'm just going to put a little pencil mark there. Okay? And that's where I'm going to cut everything. Now undo this seam here a little ways. Go over about 3 inches and undo it. As you're undoing this seam, make sure you have some tape, clear tape, nearby, because you want to wrap tape around this end immediately, because it will immediately unravel the moment you start ripping this seam open. So put some tape on there. Pull the fabric ends back and lay your piping next to each other. And as you can see, the actual cording is still long. So now I'm going to put a mark there, because now I want to cut it, and make sure you have tape there. It's really important. And cut it off. And now your ends will butt up against each other. Now pull the cording out of the way and bring the front sides of the 2 ends of your fabric, your piping fabric, which means fold this together, fold it in half, because it'll be so much easier. So then go ahead and stitch a 1/4 inch seam to a 1/2 inch seam along here. There might be some adjustments because it all depends on how you cut everything. But it's better to have this too long in the beginning than too short. Once you're done, then fold it over. Make sure you open that seam up, and then finish pinning along the edge here. On my sewing machine, I have the option of moving my needle over to the far side. So it's going to be really easy for me to get as close to the cording as possible. So if you have that feature on your sewing machine, I would use it in this case. If you don't have it, then just try to get as close as you possibly can. If you have this kind of piping foot, it is going to be a lot easier. If you have both features, it's going to be a breeze. So go ahead and stitch as close to that cording as possible, and of course remove your pins as you go along, and go all the way around 4 sides. Take your fabric for the other side of the pillow and bring it front side down. Place pins around all of the edges and line up the fabric. Now it's going to be a little tricky because you're going up over this piping now. So take your time to get this all lined up. So pin it all the way around on all 4 sides. When you're stitching, you're going to leave an opening so that you'll be able to turn this front side out, and also you need that opening to insert your polyfill stuffing. So right here is going to be my opening. So stitch here, go all the way around all 4 sides, and stop stitching on the other side of your opening, and back stitch at both sides of the opening. At all the corners, you want to trim some of it off. Don't get too close to your stitching there, because then it's going to come apart. Like I said, go about halfway and trim it off. Your corners will turn a little bit nicer if you do that. Reach inside the opening and go down and grab a corner and begin pulling it front side out. Here is the stuffing that I use. It's Polyfill Ultra Plush polyester stuffing. And you can get this at Walmart, but not all Walmarts sell fabric and craft items. Luckily for me, my local Walmart does. So, wherever you buy it, when you pull it out of the bag, break it up into really small pieces, okay? You don't want to pull out great big clumps out of the bag and shove it all in there, because your pillow then is going to become very lumpy. Take the polyfill and insert it small amounts at a time, and go to the corners first. That's what I like to do. So I go to the farthest corners from the opening and push it into the corners. And you just keep doing that until you have the entire pillow full. And because this is a pretty large pillow, even though it's long and skinny, it's still a big pillow. So it's going to take a lot of polyfill. So I would buy a really big bag. Fold the edge in at the opening, and I like using these little quilting clips or little, I think they're called wonder clips maybe. And I sometimes use those to hold the opening closed while I do a hand stitch. The hand stitch that I recommend you do is called, either it's called a slip stitch, because I often say that, and others use the word ladder stitch. So if you're not sure how to do the ladder stitch, click on the link in the upper right hand corner, and I have a detailed video on how to do it. When you finish the ladder stitch, do a few tiny little stitches in place. Then, so that the end of your thread never shows, go back in close to where that last stitch was. Go right through the pillow and come out anywhere else of the pillow. Let me see if I can get a hold of this. And pull it through. Then cut the thread, mush your fabric around, and the end of that thread is completely hidden. For more easy sew projects, play this video all the way to the end until a green screen appears, and then click on the links. If you like this video, please click on thumbs up, and also click on share to share this video with your friends. And if you haven't subscribed yet, then click on that red button down there in the lower right hand corner of your screen. Click on that little bell and then enter your email address so that you'll receive future email notifications about my latest video. If you don't seem to be receiving those notifications, go to your cell phone, click on settings, and set notifications in the on position. I'm Cheryl. This is Manny. Thanks again for coming by. See you next time. Happy sewing!